The Grand Council Chamber of the Vorath homeworld was the largest structure Haiyan Wu had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high that clouds of mist gathered near the top. Massive pillars of black stone lined the walls, each carved with the faces of ancient Vorath emperors. Floating platforms carried hundreds of alien dignitaries from dozens of species, all watching the human ambassador with curious or hostile eyes. Haiyan Wu stood alone on a small platform in the center of the chamber. He wore a simple black suit, the official uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. In his hand, he held a datapad containing the official response from United Earth. His heart beat fast, but his face showed nothing. He had trained for 20 years to stand in moments like this. Around him, the Vorath filled the highest platforms. They were tall beings, nearly 3 meters in height, with gray skin that looked like polished stone. Their eyes glowed soft blue, and their voices echoed like thunder in deep caves. The Vorath had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 400 star systems, and their fleets numbered in the millions. To them, humanity was nothing more than an insect that had learned to crawl between the stars. High Executor Voronil stepped forward on the central platform, above Haiyan Wu. He was the leader of the Vorath Empire, chosen by blood and conquest. His ceremonial armor was made of living metal that shifted and flowed across his body. When he spoke, his voice filled every corner of the massive chamber without any need for amplification. "Human ambassador," Voronil began, his tone cold and dismissive. "You have been called before this council to answer for your species' crimes against the Vorath Imperium." Haiyan Wu bowed his head slightly, showing respect but not submission. "I am honored to stand before the council. I am ready to hear the charges." Voronil gestured with one massive hand, and holographic images appeared throughout the chamber. They showed star maps, colony ships, and human settlements on distant worlds. "Your species has violated the expansion protocols of the Galactic Order," Voronil declared. "In the past 50 years, humanity has established 15 colonial settlements in the Kepler Rim sector. This territory was not assigned to you. You did not request permission. You simply took what you wanted, like thieves in the night." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many of the alien species present had suffered under Vorath rule. They knew what happened to those who challenged the Empire's authority. Some looked at Haiyan Wu with pity, others with fear. Voronil continued, his voice growing harder. "The Vorath Imperium demands the following: immediate withdrawal from all unauthorized colonies, surrender of all colonial infrastructure, and submission to Vorath oversight of all future human expansion. You will accept observers on Earth and all human worlds. Your military will be reduced to defensive capabilities only." The demands hung in the air like a death sentence. Haiyan Wu knew what they really meant. The Vorath wanted to turn humanity into a servant species, controlled and contained forever. It was the fate of dozens of other races who had tried to expand beyond their homeworlds. "And if we refuse?" Haiyan Wu asked, his voice steady. Voronil smiled, a terrible expression on his stone-like face. "Then the Vorath war fleet will burn your colonies to ash and reduce Earth to a graveyard. Your species will serve as an example to all others who dream of defying the natural order of the galaxy." Silence fell across the chamber. Every eye turned to Haiyan Wu, waiting for his response. The human ambassador was expected to beg, to negotiate, to offer some desperate compromise. That was what weak species did when faced with the Vorath. But Haiyan Wu did not beg. Instead, he straightened his back and looked directly into Voronil's glowing eyes. "High Executor, I request a recess of 7 standard days to consult with my government. The matters you have raised require careful consideration." Voronil laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. 7 days? You ask for time to prepare your surrender, human? Very well. We grant your request. 7 days from now, you will return to this chamber with Earth's answer. Choose wisely. The Vorath do not offer mercy twice. The council session ended, and Haiyan Wu was escorted back to his ship by armed Vorath guards. They treated him like a prisoner already, pushing him forward and making comments in their own language that clearly mocked him. Haiyan Wu ignored them all. His mind was already racing ahead, planning the next moves. His ship, the ESS Covenant, was a small diplomatic vessel docked at the edge of the Vorath station. It was fast and well equipped, but it carried no weapons. Diplomatic ships never did. As Haiyan Wu walked up the boarding ramp, a young woman rushed to meet him. Her name was G1, and she served as his chief intelligence officer. "Ambassador, how did it go?" she asked, falling into step beside him. As expected, Haiyan Wu replied, "They want complete surrender. 7 days to respond." G1 nodded grimly. "Then we need to talk." "I found something, sir. Something that changes everything." They moved to Haiyan Wu's private office, a small room lined with screens and secure communication equipment. G1 activated the room's privacy shields, ensuring no one could listen to their conversation. "You told me to dig into Vorath history," Guy-1 said, pulling up files on her datapad, "to look for anything unusual about their early expansion, especially around our sector of space. And what did you find?" G1 hesitated. "Sir, I think the Vorath have been lying. Not just to us, but to the entire galaxy. There's a classified incident in their records. Something called the Pale Fire Event. It happened about 150 years ago, in a system that matches the coordinates of our sun." Haiyan Wu felt his blood turn cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the Vorath came to Earth before we ever reached the stars," G1 replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And whatever happened there, they buried it so deep that even most Vorath don't know about it. But I found fragments, weapon signatures, casualty reports. Something terrible happened, Ambassador. And I think the Vorath were responsible." Haiyan Wu stared at the data on G1's screen. The numbers blurred before his eyes as the implications sank in. If this was true, everything humanity believed about their first contact with alien life was a lie. The Vorath weren't just threatening humanity's future. They were hiding something about humanity's past. "We have 7 days," Haiyan Wu said finally. "Find me the truth. Find me proof. Whatever the Vorath did to Earth, I want to know everything." G1 nodded, her eyes hard with determination. "Yes, Ambassador. I'll find it. Whatever it takes." As the Covenant undocked and began its journey back to human space, Haiyan Wu stood alone in his office, staring out at the stars. Somewhere in those lights was the truth about what happened to Earth, and he would find it, even if it meant going to war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. 150 years before Haiyan Wu stood in the Grand Council chamber, Earth was a very different place. Nations still fought over borders and resources. Space travel was limited to the inner solar system. Humanity had no idea that other intelligent life existed among the stars. They were about to learn that lesson in the worst possible way. Tae-young was a young scientist working at the International Space Observation Network in South Korea. He spent his nights watching the sky, searching for signals from deep space. Most people thought his work was foolish. What could possibly be out there in the darkness between stars? But Tae-young believed. He believed that humanity was not alone, and he dedicated his life to proving it. One cold November night, Tae-young noticed something strange on his instruments. An energy reading unlike anything he had ever seen was moving through the outer edges of the solar system. At first, he thought it was a malfunction. He checked his equipment 3 times, but the reading remained, growing stronger with each passing hour. He called his supervisor. Dr. Ma Kyung, a brilliant woman who had spent 30 years studying cosmic phenomena. She looked at the data and grew pale. "This is not natural," she whispered. "Whatever is making this energy, it's artificial, and it's heading toward Earth." They reported their findings to the International Science Council, but their warnings were ignored. Government officials laughed at the idea of alien visitors. Military leaders dismissed it as censor error. By the time anyone took them seriously, it was too late. 3 days after Taeyang first spotted the anomaly, it arrived in Earth orbit. It was not one ship but 5, each one larger than any structure humanity had ever built. They hung in the sky like mountains of metal, blocking out the stars. Cities around the world fell silent as people stared up at the impossible sight. The ships belonged to the Vorath Imperium. They were a reconnaissance fleet conducting what the Vorath called a resource survey of uncharted territories. To them, Earth was just another primitive planet to be catalogued and assessed. They did not bother attempting communication. Why would they? The creatures below were barely more advanced than animals. What happened next would haunt humanity for generations. Earth's early warning satellites. Primitive things designed to watch for nuclear missiles. Activated automatically when the Vorath ships entered orbit. The Vorath commanders, following standard protocols, interpreted these satellites as potential weapon platforms. Without hesitation, they opened fire. The satellites were destroyed in seconds. But the Vorath weapons were not precise. Debris rained down on the planet below, mixed with energy discharge from the alien guns. Seoul was hit first. A massive chunk of burning metal crashed into the heart of the city, killing thousands instantly. Fires spread through the streets as emergency services struggled to respond. Moscow was next. Then São Paulo. Then a dozen smaller cities around the world. The attacks lasted only minutes, but the damage was catastrophic. Nearly 100,000 people died that night. Millions more were injured. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded and dying. Taeyang was at his observation station when Seoul was hit. He watched in horror as the city where his family lived was consumed by fire. He tried to call his sister, Nara, again and again. She was a nurse at a hospital near the city center. She never answered. The next morning, Taeyang learned that Nara was among the dead. She had been helping patients evacuate when part of the hospital collapsed. She was 26 years old. She had been planning her wedding for the spring. While humanity struggled to understand what had happened, the Vorath completed their survey. They found that Earth had useful mineral resources, but nothing exceptional. They noted that the local species had developed basic nuclear technology and rudimentary space travel. In their official report, they classified Earth as a Class 3 pre-contact world and marked it as unsuitable for immediate colonization. As for the destruction they had caused, the Vorath recorded it as minor collateral damage during standard reconnaissance procedures. The loss of native life was not considered significant. After all, what was the death of 100,000 primitives compared to the needs of the Imperium? Before leaving, the Vorath did one final thing. They used their advanced technology to erase all evidence of their presence. Satellite recordings were scrambled. Electronic equipment that had detected their ships was fried. Even the physical debris from the attacks was altered to look like natural meteor fragments. Earth's governments, confused and frightened, conducted their own investigations. Without evidence of alien involvement, they reached the only conclusion they could. The disasters were caused by an unexpected meteor shower, combined with satellite malfunctions. It was a tragedy, but a natural one. The truth was buried, partly because the evidence was destroyed, and partly because no one wanted to believe that Earth was helpless against forces beyond their understanding. But some people knew the truth. Taeyang knew. He had seen the readings. He had watched the ships arrive and depart. and he had lost his sister to alien weapons that most of the world did not believe existed. In the years that followed, Tae-young channeled his grief into his work. He became obsessed with advancing human technology. If aliens could come to Earth and murder his family without consequences, then humanity needed to become strong enough to fight back. He dedicated every moment of his life to making that dream a reality. 20 years after the attack, Tae-young led the team that developed humanity's first successful faster-than-light drive. It was the breakthrough that opened the stars to human exploration. When journalists asked him what motivated his research, he gave vague answers about human curiosity and the desire to explore. He never mentioned the real reason. He never mentioned Na-Ra. But Tae-young kept detailed journals throughout his life. In them, he wrote everything he knew about the Vorath attack. He described the ships, the weapon signatures, the cover-up by both the aliens and Earth's governments. He wrote about his sister and about his promise to make sure humanity would never be so helpless again. When Tae-young died at the age of 78, his journals were locked away in a secure archive. They were classified as historical documents of sensitive nature and forgotten by most of the world. But they were not destroyed. They survived, waiting for someone to find them, waiting for someone who would finally bring the truth to light. 130 years later, Ji-won would be that someone. And when she read Tae-young's words, she would understand that humanity's conflict with the Vorath did not begin with colonial expansion or violated protocols. It began with fire falling from the sky and a young woman dying in the ruins of her hospital. The Vorath struck first. They just never expected humanity to remember. The Covenant arrived at Earth 3 days after leaving the Vorath homeworld. Hyeon-woo had spent the entire journey studying the fragments of data the G1 had discovered. The more he learned, the more certain he became that the Vorath were hiding something terrible. But fragments were not enough. He needed solid proof, evidence that could not be denied or dismissed. G1 worked without sleep, tracing connections through old archives and forgotten databases. She was the best intelligence officer in the diplomatic corps, and she had never faced a challenge like this. The information she was looking for was 150 years old, hidden behind layers of classification and deliberate erasure. The key is the weapon signatures, she explained to Hyeon-woo during one of their briefings. Every species has unique energy patterns in their weapons. If we can find original recordings from the 2089 incident and match them to known Vorath weapons, we have our proof. Where do we find recordings that old? Hyeon-woo asked. G-1 pulled up a map of Earth on her screen. The old observation stations. Most of them were decommissioned decades ago, but a few were preserved as historical sites. Their data storage systems might still contain original files from that time. They traveled to the Jeju Island Observatory, one of the oldest space observation facilities in Asia. It was now a museum, visited mostly by students and history enthusiasts. The ancient equipment sat behind protective glass, relics of an age when humanity could barely reach their own moon. The museum director, a kind old man named Song-ho, was surprised to receive a visit from such important officials. When Hyeon-woo explained that they needed access to the original data systems for a matter of planetary security, Song-ho agreed immediately. He led them through dusty corridors to a basement storage room that had not been opened in decades. "Everything from the old days is here," Sang-ho said, gesturing at rows of ancient servers and storage units. "We preserved it all, just in case someone needed it. I never thought anyone actually would." G1 connected her equipment to the old systems and began searching. The data was corrupted in many places, damaged by time and neglect. But she was patient and skilled. Hour after hour, she worked through the files, reconstructing lost information piece by piece. Meanwhile, Hyeon-woo received a message on his secure communication device. It came from an anonymous source, encrypted with codes that no human system could have created. When he decrypted it, he found himself reading a message from someone inside the Vorath Empire itself. The sender identified himself only as Kalos, a military historian who had served the Imperium for over 60 years. He claimed to have grown disillusioned with the lies and propaganda that held the Empire together. He had learned of Haiyan Wu's investigation and wanted to help. "I have access to classified military records," the message read. "Records that prove what the Vorath did to your world. I will provide them to you, but you must promise to use them wisely. The truth is a weapon, Ambassador. Make sure you aim it at the right target." Haiyan Wu responded carefully, neither fully trusting nor rejecting the offer. In his experience, mysterious allies often had their own agendas. But if Kalos could provide what he promised, it would be worth the risk. Back in the basement, G1 finally broke through the last layer of corruption. She called Haiyan Wu over with excitement in her voice. "I found them. Original sensor recordings from November 15th, 2089. Look at this." The screen showed energy readings from that terrible night. G1 highlighted specific patterns and compared them to known databases. These weapon signatures match Vorath plasma cannons exactly. Not similar. Not close. Exact matches. The weapons that destroyed those satellites and killed those people were Vorath military equipment. She pulled up more files. Partial visual recordings, badly damaged but still readable, showed the silhouettes of massive ships against the stars. The design was unmistakably Vorath. "There's more," G1 continued. "I found a personal archive hidden in the system. It belonged to a scientist named Tae Young." She opened the archive, and they read Tae Young's journals together. The old scientist's words painted a picture of horror and loss, of a young man who watched his world burn and dedicated his life to preventing it from happening again. When they reached the entry about Nara's death, even Haiyan Wu, who had trained himself to show no emotion, felt his eyes grow wet. "He knew the truth," Haiyan Wu said quietly. "He spent his entire life knowing, and he could never tell anyone." "He did tell someone," G1 replied. "He told us. He left this record so that someday someone would find it and finish what he started." 2 days later, the message from Kalos arrived. True to his word, the Vorath historian provided internal military documents from the 2089 mission. They confirmed everything Tae Young had written and added terrible new details. The Vorath High Command had known that Earth was inhabited before the reconnaissance fleet arrived. Long-range scans had detected radio signals and primitive spacecraft. But the Vorath leadership had decided that pre-contact species did not qualify as intelligent life under Imperial law. Their safety was not a priority. When the reconnaissance commander reported the accidental casualties on Earth, the High Command had simply ordered him to clean up the evidence and continue the mission. No investigation was conducted. No one was punished. The deaths of 100,000 humans were filed under acceptable losses during routine operations. Haiyan Wu read the documents 3 times to make sure he understood them correctly. Then he sat in silence for a long time, thinking about what he would do with this knowledge. His assistant, Su Bin, a young diplomat on her first major assignment, approached him hesitantly. "Ambassador, are you all right?" "I'm trying to decide something," Haiyan Wu replied. "When I present this evidence to the Council, it will change everything. The Vorath will be humiliated. Their empire might collapse. Millions could die in the resulting chaos." "And if you stay silent?" Su Bin asked. "Then humanity submits to the Vorath forever. We become their servants. And the people who died in 2089, including Tae Young's sister, they died for nothing." Su Bin nodded slowly. "It sounds like you've already made your decision." Haiyan Wu looked at the young woman, and saw something of himself in her eyes. The sane determination. The sane belief in truth over convenience. "I have," he said. "The truth deserves to be heard. Whatever comes next, we face it together." He began preparing his presentation for the Grand Council. In 3 days, he would return to the Vorith homeworld and deliver the message that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The 7 days had passed. Haiyan Wu stood once again in the Grand Council chamber, but this time everything was different. Behind him, on elevated platforms arranged by the chamber's automated systems, sat representatives from 47 neutral species. They had come from across the galaxy, summoned by urgent messages from the human diplomatic corps. Most of them were smaller civilizations, species that existed under the shadow of Vorith power. They had come because Haiyan Wu promised them something unprecedented, the truth. High Executor Voronil looked down at the human ambassador with cold satisfaction. He saw the gathered species and assumed they had come to witness humanity's surrender. It would be a useful demonstration of Vorith power, a reminder to all lesser races of their proper place in the galactic order. "Human ambassador," Voronil announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have had your 7 days. Earth has considered our terms. Now it is time for your answer. Will humanity submit to the Vorath Imperium and accept its place among the guided species? Or will you choose destruction?" The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Haiyan Wu. Many expected him to bow, to offer desperate compromises, to beg for mercy. That was how these things always ended. The strong dictated terms, and the weak accepted them. Haiyan Wu stepped forward. His voice was calm and clear, carrying to every corner of the massive chamber without any sign of fear. "High Executor, before I deliver Earth's response, I must address a matter of historical importance. You have accused humanity of violating expansion protocols. You claim we have taken territory without permission. But before we discuss human expansion, let us first discuss Vorith expansion." Voronil's expression shifted slightly. "What are you talking about?" Haiyan Wu looked directly into the High Executor's glowing eyes. "You struck first. You attacked our home." The words hung in the air like thunder. Murmurs spread through the assembled species. The Vorith representatives exchanged confused glances. Voronil's face twisted with anger. "What nonsense is this? The Vorith have never attacked Earth. We only discovered your species 30 years ago when your primitive ships entered our territory." "That is a lie," Haiyan Wu replied. "And I can prove it." He activated his datapad, and holographic displays filled the chamber. The first image showed Earth as it appeared 150 years ago, a blue planet covered with clouds and oceans. Then the display shifted to show energy readings, weapon signatures, and ship silhouettes. November 15th, 2089, Haiyan Wu announced, "A Vorith reconnaissance fleet entered the Sol system." They did not announce themselves. They did not attempt communication. They simply arrived and began their survey. The display showed the moment of attack. Satellites exploding. Debris falling toward the planet below. Cities burning. Your weapons destroyed our orbital infrastructure. The debris and energy discharge killed nearly 100,000 human beings. Seoul, Moscow, Snow, Paulo. These were not military targets. They were cities full of innocent people. Images of the destruction filled the chamber. Buildings collapsed into rubble. Bodies in the streets. Children crying among the ruins. The neutral species representatives watched in horror. Many of them had never seen evidence of Vorith violence presented so clearly. Voronil raised his hand, attempting to regain control. "These images prove nothing. They could be fabricated. Humans are known for their deceptions. Then perhaps you will accept testimony from one of your own." A side door opened, and a tall Vorith entered the chamber. He wore the robes of a military historian, marked with symbols of distinguished service. The Vorath representatives gasped in recognition. This was Kalos, one of the most respected scholars in the Imperium. Kylos walked to the center of the chamber and stood beside Haiyan Wu. His voice was heavy with age, but steady with conviction. What the human ambassador says is true. I have spent my life studying the history of our empire. I believed we were a force for order and progress. But I have seen the classified records. I have read the reports that were hidden from our people. He activated his own display, showing internal Vorath military documents. The reconnaissance mission to Earth was authorized by the High Command. They knew the planet was inhabited. They classified humans as a pre-contact species and decided their safety was not a priority. When the reconnaissance commander reported civilian casualties, his superiors ordered him to erase all evidence and continue the mission. The chamber erupted in chaos. Vorath officials shouted denials. Neutral species demanded explanations. Security forces moved toward Kalos, but hesitated, uncertain whether to arrest a decorated Imperial scholar. Voronil slammed his fist against his platform, demanding silence. This is treason. This human has corrupted one of our own with lies and manipulation. Haiyan Wu spoke over the noise, his voice cutting through the chaos. I have one more piece of evidence. The personal journals of Dr. Tae Young, the human scientist who first detected your ships. He lost his sister in the attack. He spent his entire life trying to make humanity strong enough to face you. And he wrote down everything he knew, hoping that someday the truth would come out. He displayed excerpts from Tae-Young's journals. The old scientist's words appeared in the air, translated into every language spoken in the chamber. His grief, his anger, his determination, and finally, his hope that future generations would find justice. The neutral species representatives were no longer merely watching. They were standing, shouting, demanding answers. Many of them were themselves pre-contact species who had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They realized with horrible clarity that they could have suffered the same fate as Earth. They could have been surveyed and dismissed as unimportant. Their people could have been killed and forgotten. A representative from the Meridian species stepped forward. If the Vorath could do this to humanity, they could do it to any of us. How many other species have they destroyed without anyone knowing? More voices joined in. The Vorath Empire had always claimed to bring order and civilization to the galaxy. Now that claim was collapsing. The foundation of lies that had supported 10,000 years of dominance was cracking apart. Voronil tried one final time to assert control. This changes nothing. Even if these events occurred, they were accidents. The Vorath Imperium does not answer to primitive species for incidents that happened over a century ago. Haiyan Wu faced him without flinching. They were not accidents. Your records prove that your commanders knew what they were doing. They chose to attack. They chose to cover it up. And now you stand here, demanding that humanity surrender, pretending that we are the aggressors. He paused, letting his words sink in. The galaxy is watching, High Executor. What will you do now? Will you apologize for the murder of 100,000 innocent people? Or will you prove that the Vorath care nothing for justice? Voronil's face twisted with rage and something else. Fear. He had never expected this. He had never imagined that a species as young and weak as humanity could stand in the heart of his empire and challenge him with the truth. The neutral species began moving toward the exits, their representatives already composing messages to their homeworlds. The story of what happened in the Grand Council chamber would spread across the galaxy within hours. The Vorath Empire would never be seen the same way again. As the chamber descended into chaos, Haiyan Wu stood calmly in the center of the storm. He had done what Tae Young could not. He had brought the truth into the light. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it with their heads held high. They had not forgotten. They would never forget. The months that followed Haiyan Wu's revelation changed the galaxy forever. The truth spread like fire across a dry plain, burning through the careful propaganda that had supported the Vorath Empire for 10,000 years. News broadcasts, diplomatic channels, and underground networks all carried the same message. The Vorath had attacked Earth before humanity ever reached the stars, and they had lied about it ever since. The reaction was swift and devastating for the Empire. 7 client species declared independence within the first 3 weeks. Their leaders cited the 2089 incident as proof that the Vorath could not be trusted to protect anyone. More declarations followed. Systems that had served the Empire for centuries suddenly found the courage to demand freedom. On the Vorath homeworld, High Executor Voronil faced a crisis unlike any in Imperial history. His own council turned against him, blaming him for the public relations disaster. They argued among themselves about how to respond. Some wanted to crush the rebellions with overwhelming military force. Others warned that such actions would only confirm the galaxy's worst fears about Vorath brutality. In the end, the council voted to remove Voronil from power. He was replaced by a reformist faction led by Commander Doranil, a younger leader who understood that the Empire could not survive by force alone. Doranil reached out to the human diplomatic corps with an unprecedented offer: direct negotiations for a formal peace treaty. Haiyan-Wu received the invitation while aboard the Covenant, which had become an informal headquarters for the growing coalition of species who opposed Vorath dominance. He read the message carefully, weighing every word. The Vorath were offering to talk, but Haiyan Wu knew that talking meant nothing without real change. He traveled to a neutral station in the Meridian system, where representatives from 12 major species had gathered to witness the negotiations. The station hung in orbit around a gas giant, its lights glowing against the backdrop of swirling storms below. Commander Doranil met Haiyan Wu in a conference room overlooking the planet. The new Vorath leader was taller than Voronil, but carried himself differently. There was something almost humble in his manner, though Haiyan Wu remained cautious. Ambassador Haiyan Wu, Doranil began, I will not waste your time with excuses or denials. The evidence you presented is genuine. The 2089 incident occurred exactly as you described. On behalf of the Vorath Imperium, I offer a formal apology for the deaths of your people. Haiyan Wu nodded, but did not speak. An apology was a start, but it was not enough. Doranil continued. We are prepared to offer reparations, financial compensation for the victims' families, technology transfers to assist human development, and most importantly, formal recognition of all human colonies as sovereign territory under galactic law. What about the future? Haiyan Wu asked. What guarantee do we have that the Vorath will not simply repeat this pattern with other species? Doranil hesitated. This was the question his advisors had warned him about. Answering it honestly would require admitting fundamental flaws in Vorath society. But he had seen what happened when the Empire chose lies over truth. We are prepared to join a new galactic compact, Doranil said. A treaty organization that establishes protections for pre-contact species. Any civilization that has not yet developed faster than light travel would be protected from interference by more advanced species. We would submit to inspections and oversight to ensure compliance. The representatives from other species murmured in surprise. The Vorath had never submitted to outside oversight for anything. This was a genuine concession, a sign that the Empire understood it could not continue as before. Haiyan Wu studied Doranil's face, looking for signs of deception. He found none. The Vorath commander seemed genuinely committed to reform, whether from moral conviction or practical necessity. I will take your proposal to my government, Haiyan Wu said finally. But I want you to understand something. Humanity did not expose your secrets because we wanted to destroy the Vorith. We did it because we believe that civilization cannot be built on lies. If you truly want peace, you must commit to truth. Not just with us, but with every species you encounter. Doranil bowed his head. I understand. We have much work to do to earn the galaxy's trust. But we are willing to try. The negotiations continued for several more months. There were arguments, setbacks, and moments when the entire process seemed ready to collapse. But in the end, a treaty was signed. The Vorith apologized publicly for the 2089 incident. They established a memorial fund for the victims and their descendants. And they joined the Galactic Compact, becoming the first major power to accept limits on their treatment of developing species. Haiyan Wu returned to Earth as a hero. Crowds gathered at spaceports to welcome him home. Political leaders praised his courage and wisdom. But Haiyan Wu felt no desire for celebration. He had one more task to complete. He traveled to the memorial that had been built for the victims of the 2089 attack. It stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city of Seoul, a simple structure of white stone engraved with the names of everyone who had died. Among those names was Nara, Taeyang's sister, the young nurse who had died trying to save her patients. Haiyan Wu placed flowers at the base of the memorial and stood in silence for a long time. The wind rustled through nearby trees, carrying the sound of children playing in a park below. Life continued. The dead could not be brought back, but they could be remembered. We did it, Haiyan Wu said quietly, speaking to no one and everyone. We found the truth. We made them answer for what they did. You can rest now. G1 was promoted to Chief of Interstellar Intelligence after the treaty was signed. She spent her career ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unaware by hostile forces. She often thought about Taeyang and the journals that had made everything possible. He had kept the truth alive for over a century, waiting for someone to find it. Without his dedication, none of this would have happened. The Galactic Compact grew stronger over the following decades. More species joined, attracted by the promise of protection and fair treatment. The Vorith Empire, reduced in size but still powerful, slowly reformed its institutions. Young Vorith grew up learning about the 2089 incident as a cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance and deception. On the anniversary of the revelation, a new holiday was established across human space. They called it Pale Fire Remembrance Day, named after the classified incident that had started everything. On that day, humans everywhere paused to remember the victims of 2089 and to celebrate the courage of those who had brought the truth to light. The final scene of this story took place on the bridge of humanity's newest starship, the ESS Taeyang, named in honor of the scientist who had given his life to advancing human civilization. Captain Dong Haiyan stood at the command console, preparing for the ship's maiden voyage into unexplored space. His first officer, a young woman named Hana, approached with the mission briefing. Captain, we've received our final orders from Earth Command. We're cleared for departure. Dong Haiyan nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice carried to every corner of the vessel. Crew of the Taeyang, this is your captain speaking. In a few minutes, we will leave known space and travel into regions no human has ever explored. We go not as conquerors, but as explorers and witnesses. We carry with us the memory of those who suffered so that we could reach the stars. He paused, looking out at the infinite darkness ahead. Remember what we learned from the past. The truth matters. Every species matters. And no one should have to suffer in silence as our ancestors did. This is our promise. This is humanity's vow. The ship's engines powered up, filling the bridge with a soft hum of energy. Stars stretched into lines as the Taeyong jumped to faster-than-light speed, vanishing into the unknown, somewhere in the depths of space. Other civilizations looked toward the stars and wondered about the humans who had stood up to an empire and demanded justice. They heard the stories passed from system to system, growing with each retelling. The humans were survivors. They remembered their wounds. And they had proven that even the smallest voice could change the galaxy if it spoke the truth loudly enough. That the darkness of space held many dangers, but it also held hope. And as long as humanity remembered the past, they would never stop reaching toward a better future.